General Hospital spoilers teasing that Sam McCall has died, and Jason Morgan finds himself thrown headlong into the impossible role of single father to his son, Danny Morgan, only to discover that parenthood may be far more dangerous than anything the mob could ever muster. The fractured protector. Jason Morgan woke in the gray pre-dawn light of his Port Charles apartment to the deafening silence of absence. Sam's side of the bed lay cold and empty. The life that had once filled these walls with laughter and light was gone, snatched away in a single, brutal instant that still felt unreal. Grief was a weight pressing on his chest, but heavier still was the new reality. Danny Morgan, his 10-year-old son, now depended on him for everything. No Sonny Corinthos to lean on, no mob family to soften the blow. Jason was on his own. Across the room, Danny lay curled beneath a rumpled comforter, restless dreams turning his small body in uneasy circles. Jason's heart clenched at the sight. A boy who'd already lost his mother shouldn't have to lose his father's steadiness too. Carefully, Jason pushed aside the memories of fights and hits, the brutal pragmatism that had defined his life as Sonny's enforcer. Here, in this apartment, he needed a different strength. One forged from patience, affection, and a fierce desire to keep Danny safe from the world that had already taken so much from him. Jason rose and drew open the curtains. The sky was bruised purple and gray, promising another soggy Port Charles morning. He listened for Danny's breathing, steady, but too loud in the hush. Jason moved quietly to the kitchenette, preparing a simple breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast, recalling how Sam had coaxed Danny into eating anything at all after his nightmares. Without thinking, Jason set 2 plates on the coffee table and nudged Danny awake. "Breakfast," Jason murmured. His voice was rough, unpracticed in domesticity. Danny's dark eyes opened, confusion flickering before recognition. "Dad," he whispered. "Eat," Jason said firmly, more gently than he intended. Danny sat up, pushing tangled hair from his forehead, and nibbled at the eggs. Jason watched, torn between relief and dread. Mealtime battles, homework struggles, the stinging hurled insults. These were the new frontiers of his life. He steeled himself. He would be a good father, no matter the sacrifices. But fate, it seemed, wasn't content to let Jason learn the lessons of patience at his own pace. By midday, Danny's restlessness had morphed into outright rebellion. The neighborhood kids dared him to tag a painted wall with his initials. Danny, craving approval and attention, accepted without hesitation. Jason discovered the graffiti on his way home from the hospital, fresh spray paint still glistening in the drizzle. "Danny," Jason's voice cracked like a whip. Danny stood on the sidewalk, a defiant sneer on his face. "You stupid idiot, what do you think you're doing?" Danny's bravado flickered. He looked away. "They dared me." Jason's instinct was to grab him by the collar, drag him into the alley, and teach him the consequences of disrespect. Years in Sonny's organization had taught him that discipline often needed to be swift and brutal. Without thinking, Jason's broad hand lashed out once, hard, across Danny's cheek. The crack echoed in the empty street. Danny's eyes widened, tears springing to the surface. "You hit me," he choked. Jason's own chest tightened. He had struck his son. All at once the world shifted. Memories of the barrel of a gun, the cold click of a trigger, these now felt easier to bear than the look in Danny's eyes. Guilt seared through him, hotter than any alley ambush. But before he could apologize, Danny turned on him, fury replacing fear. "You don't care about me," Danny screamed, voice trembling with rage and heartbreak. "You only care about making me obey." And with that, Danny's small hand closed around a discarded brick. He swung wildly and hit Jason in the ribs. Jason staggered back, breath knocked from him, blood smelling sharp in his lungs. For a heartbeat, time froze. Jason saw in Danny's eyes a reflection of his own worst fears, that he was a monster, incapable of love without violence. Then Danny broke down, sobbing, dropping the brick as if it burned his skin. Jason's anger evaporated, leaving a chasm of shame. He dropped to his knees, pulling Danny close even as Danny twisted away. "Son." "I'm sorry," Jason whispered, voice ragged. Danny flinched but didn't run. Jason's hand trembled on Danny's shoulder. "I shouldn't have hit you, but you can't go around putting your life and mine in danger." Danny's tears spattered Jason's jacket. Jason pressed his forehead against Danny's, a silent vow forming. He would find a way to shield his son from this pain, or die trying. That night, Jason lay awake, Danny's breathing finally even in the guest room, the weight of his failure heavy on his soul. He remembered the countless men he'd taken down, the deals brokered in blood, but nothing felt as irrevocable as the possibility that he'd driven a wedge between himself and his one remaining family. If Danny truly hated him, if trust was shattered beyond repair, what future could there be? Sleep eluded him. Dawn brought no relief, only the grim reminder that consequences follow every act. Police cars blocked the street near Danny's school. A lunchroom fight had escalated. Danny was implicated in assault. Jason, in his stiff suit, arrived to find Danny handcuffed, flanked by 2 patrol officers. The boy looked small, too small to stand between Jason and the law, yet there he was, chin up, eyes defiant. "You're his father?" one officer asked. "You're responsible for that kid's behavior." Jason nodded, jaw tight. He paid the fine, signed the statements, stared down the judge's stern gaze. Outside the courthouse, he ushered Danny into the back seat of his car. Danny stayed silent, staring out the window as Jason stewed in guilt and anger. There was only one question that truly mattered: how to rebuild the bond he'd broken. The broken heirloom. In the days that followed, tension wound tighter around the Morgan household than any prison cell. Danny alternated between sullen withdrawal and explosive outbursts. Jason oscillated between threats of strict discipline and desperate attempts at warmth, movie nights, impromptu baseball games, shared meals, anything to bridge the chasm. But the memory of the slap, the brick, the school incident, loomed between them like a specter. One rainy afternoon, Jason returned home to find the front door ajar. Adrenaline spiked as he reached for his phone. Danny's voicemail icon blinking. He raced inside, calling out, heart in his throat. No answer. Only overturned furniture, broken picture frames, Sam's favorite silver locket shattered on the floor. Jason's breath caught. Then, from the darkness of the kitchen, a shape lunged at him. He sidestepped, hand swinging, and connected with something solid, Danny's head. The boy collapsed, dazed, and Jason rushed to his side. "Danny!" God, Jason's heart pounded. Danny's small form lay motionless. Blood trickled from a gash above his eye. Jason scooped him into his arms, cradle style, and drove to the hospital on a dark highway, rain sliding across the windshield like tears. Fear clawed at Jason. He had almost killed his own son. At General Hospital, doctors rushed Danny into surgery. Jason paced the corridor, mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Memories of Sam's death haunted him, the night she died, how he'd held her hand as she slipped away. If he lost Danny too, he would never forgive himself. Hours later, the surgeon emerged. Danny would live, but the recovery would be long, and the emotional scars perhaps deeper than the physical. Jason's shoulders sagged in relief. But as he stared at the closed doors of the intensive care unit, a darker truth settled in his gut. What if Danny awakened forever resentful, a child who had killed his father's hope? Over the next weeks, Jason stayed by Danny's side, reading stories in a hushed voice, bringing favorite snacks, holding vigil through restless nights. Danny's eyes opened once, glazed and distant. "I'm sorry, Dad," he whispered. Jason pressed a fingertip to his son's forehead. "I'm sorry too. Let's start over." For a fleeting moment, Danny's eyes softened, but then they hardened again. "I hate you," he said. Jason closed his eyes as fresh grief washed over him. Then came the day Jason knew he couldn't remain passive. If he continued only to coddle Danny's pain, the cycle of anger and violence would repeat. He sought help, therapy recommended by Carly Spencer, parenting classes at the community center, even a support group for grief-stricken parents. Each step felt alien to him, the rough, taciturn mob soldier now vulnerable in a circle of strangers. Yet week by week, he saw Danny's guard slip, shy smiles in group therapy, tentative conversations about loss and regret. The boy's defiance persisted, but beneath it a flicker of trust began to glow. Just as hope edged its way into Jason's life, tragedy struck again. A late-night stroll home from the hospital, where Jason visited a recovering Danny, ended in gunfire. One of Sonny's old enemies, seeking revenge on Jason, ambushed him. Jason protected Danny, pushing him to safety, absorbing a bullet meant for his son. As he collapsed, Danny's scream echoed in the empty street, his arms around Jason's chest. The spark of healing that had begun was threatened to be snuffed out forever. In the hospital's trauma unit, Jason's breathing rattled dangerously. Danny sat at his bedside, clutching Jason's hand. "Please don't leave me," he sobbed. Jason opened his eyes, pain and relief warring in his gaze. He whispered, "I'm not going anywhere." The bullet had shattered more than bone. It shattered Jason's illusions of self-reliance. He needed allies. Family, friends, and even Sonny Corinthos, whose men descended on the assailant with savage efficiency. Jason survived, scarred but breathing. Danny came to visit daily, bringing sketches and whispered conversations. Slowly, the angry teenager found a new respect for the man who had taken a bullet to save him. Jason, in turn, embraced a vulnerability he had never known possible. He saw in Danny the reflection of his own lost childhood and vowed to guide him away from the darkness that had nearly consumed them both. Months later, on a rain-dappled afternoon in Kelly's diner, Jason and Danny sat across from each other over milkshakes. Danny tapped his straw, eyes thoughtful. "I'm sorry for everything," he said. Jason reached out, resting a steady hand on Danny's knuckles. "Me too. We're learning together." Outside, the world moved on, Port Charles hustling with secrets and schemes, but inside that booth, father and son forged a bond stronger than any street code or mob contract. General Hospital's corridors have witnessed countless betrayals and bloodshed, but perhaps the most profound battle is the one fought within a broken heart. Jason Morgan, hardened enforcer, rediscovered compassion in the face of unimaginable loss. Danny Morgan, angry orphan, found forgiveness in the man who could have crushed him. Their journey is far from over. Scars may never fully fade, and the shadow of Sam's absence will forever linger. Yet in their shared resilience, they have forged a new legacy, one not bound by violence, but by the unbreakable bond of a father's love and a son's hard-won trust. Jason closed his eyes against the glare of the hospital corridor lights, exhaustion tugging at every fiber of his being. He'd spent the better part of the night sitting in a stiff plastic chair, the sterile smell of antiseptic and fear mingling in his nostrils. At his side, Danny's tiny hand gripped his own, knuckles turning white with desperation. In that moment, Jason felt every regret of his life pressed down on him, the unshed tears for Sam, the brutal lessons he'd passed on without thought, the night he'd seen his own son as an enemy rather than a child in need. When dawn's pale light crept through the blinds, Jason rose with a stiffness that spoke of broken ribs and bruised pride. He carried Danny to a small consultation room off the ICU, where the child could eat breakfast in private. Nurse Marcy, veteran of more than her share of Morgan clan dramas, set a tray of pancakes and berries before Danny with a sympathetic smile. Jason stood by the doorway, silent and watchful. Danny stirred at the sight of the food, hunger finally outweighing pain. As he ate, Jason allowed himself to relax just enough to watch his son's small, determined motions, every bite a declaration that life would go on. When Danny finally looked up, Syrup on his chin and satisfaction in his grin, Jason realized that trust is built in moments like these. Small, unremarkable, yet monumental in their simplicity. Better? Jason asked softly. Yeah, Danny whispered. Thanks, Dad. The words were simple, but they reverberated through Jason's chest like church bells. He nodded, stepping closer to ruffle Danny's hair in the kindest gesture he could muster. In that instant, Jason knew the road ahead would be long and strewn with obstacles bigger than any mob war he'd faced. But he also knew that, for the first time, he had a cause worth fighting for, the broken heart of a boy who needed more than an enforcer's bark and a soldier's might. Outside the hospital, a cool breeze heralded spring's hesitant return to Port Charles. Jason helped Danny into his car, buckling him in with gentle care. For a moment, Danny's eyes met his, searching, as if weighing whether the crusty ex-con enforcer in the driver's seat could ever truly be Dad. Jason cleared his throat. I've arranged for us to live at Kelly's place for a while, he said. It's close to your school, and the owner, Lulu Spencer, she's family. She'll keep an eye on you when I'm at work. Danny blinked. Kelly's place was the diner he'd passed 100 times, never imagining it could be home. Okay, he said, voice small. Jason started the engine. Anne, I want us to go to therapy. Both of us. Danny's head snapped up. Therapy. Jason met his gaze in the rearview mirror. Yeah, I'm not ashamed to get help. Neither should you. Danny's lips pressed together, defiance mingling with curiosity. All right. A thrill of hope lit Jason's tired bones. Good. He parked across the street from Kelly's. Let's get you settled. Kelly's place bustled with the morning rush, delivery drivers, hospital staff, and a gaggle of high schoolers fueled by breakfast sandwiches. Lulu Spencer spotted them first, her warm smile a beacon in the swirl of stainless steel and formica. She ushered Danny to a booth near the window, then turned to Jason. How's he doing? Jason sighed, running a hand through his hair. Learning the hard way that bricks hurt. Lulu's eyes flicked to Danny, who was carefully lining up sugar packets. He'll be okay, she said. He needs someone who understands anger. And remorse. Jason nodded. I do. Lulu laid a hand on his arm. And he needs someone who's been through fire and come out stronger. You're that man. Jason swallowed. No one had ever worded his brokenness so kindly or recognized that beneath the bruiser's exterior lay a man who still believed in redemption. The weeks that followed carved new paths for father and son. Jason's shifts at the hospital were long and exhausting, but he greeted them with a sense of purpose. At therapy, they sat together on a well-worn sofa, Jason in his rumpled suit, Danny in a hoodie too big for him. Through tears and frustration, they learned to speak a language of honesty. I'm scared. I feel alone. I love you, Dad. Home became less a fortress and more a sanctuary. Jason cooked simple meals, pasta with marinara, grilled cheese and tomato soup, chicken and rice. He even tried pancakes on Sunday mornings, complete with whipped cream and sprinkles, Sam's favorite. Danny helped, measuring flour, cracking eggs, and sometimes sneaking a taste of sugar before the batter hit the pan. The best times were when they sat at the small kitchen table, trading stories. Danny's inane jokes about schoolyard antics, Jason's recollections of childhood powerless, to Elliot Quartermain's tantrums. Tales that made Danny giggle so hard milk squirted from his nose. On one such evening, as the golden light of sunset filled the room, Danny looked at Jason with a seriousness that caught him off guard. Dad, do you think I messed up too badly? Jason set down his fork. He reached across the table and covered Danny's hand with his. Everyone makes mistakes. It's what we learn from them that counts. Danny swallowed, eyes glistening. I want to make you proud. Jason's throat tightened. You already have. But life in Port Charles seldom allowed peace to last. Rumors swirled of Sonny Corinthos's unease with Jason's new family focus. The mob boss, who'd once seen Jason as his unflinching right hand, now watched with distant suspicion. One night, Jason discovered a message spray-painted on his car outside Kelly's. "Stay in line, Morgan." His jaw clenched. His past life was intruding on his fragile present. Inside Kelly's, he found Lulu and Danny huddled over a board game. Lulu's eyes met his, concern etched in the small lines around her lips. Danny frowned when he saw the message. "Is it because of me?" Jason crouched beside him. "No. It's because I'm turning my back on an old life." Danny's brow furrowed. "Is that bad?" Jason looked at Lulu, then back at Danny. "It's complicated. But it means now I protect you before anything or anyone else." Danny nodded slowly. "I think I like that." Jason smiled, genuine and light. Not long after, the pings of Danny's phone jolted Jason awake. The screen lit with frantic texts. "Danny in trouble." Jason raced out to find Danny cornered in an alley by a trio of older teens. Their jeers rang in his ears as he pushed through the shadows. The largest boy shoved Danny. Jason's muscles tightened. But instead of throwing a punch, Jason grabbed the would-be bully in a wrestling hold, pinning him to the brick wall with calm precision. The other two scattered. Jason released him. The boy gasped, rubbing his back. Jason looked at Danny. "You okay?" The boy muttered an insult. Danny's gaze held Jason's, pride and relief shining in his eyes. No words were necessary. In that moment, Danny knew his father would stand between him and any threat, his protector, yes, but also a man who chose restraint. Months passed. Rocco recovered fully from his childhood illness. The threat on Jason's life ebbed as Sonny, impressed by Jason's unwavering devotion to his family, ordered his men to stand down. The therapy sessions yielded breakthroughs. Jason confronted his trauma with a mix of humility and resolve, while Danny forged friendships built on truth rather than rebellion. On the eve of Danny's 11th birthday, Jason surprised him with a trip to the Coeur d'Alene Estate Gardens. Brooke Lynn had returned from Switzerland and offered to host the celebration. Under twinkling lights and pastel balloons, Danny blew out the candles on a homemade cake. His eyes shone as he looked to Jason. "Thanks for everything, Dad." Jason knelt beside him, wrapping his arm around Danny's shoulders. "Thank you for teaching me how to be a father." As laughter and music drifted through the moonlit hedges, Jason felt the last tendrils of his old life fall away. In their place grew something stronger than fear or vengeance, a bond forged in regret, tempered by love, and sealed by the hope of a second chance. General Hospital's streets still whispered of betrayal and bloodshed, but in the quiet moments between dawn and dusk, on the battered leather couch in Kelly's place and beneath the soft glow of birthday candles, Jason and Danny Morgan found their greatest victory. Each other. In a world where loyalties shift like sand, they learned that family, flawed, fractured, and fiercely tested, is worth every sacrifice.